Welcome to, we have a lot of prospective customers, but also to or prospects, but also to customers. So we thank you for your time and we don't take that lightly. So we try to bring quality content that helps you guys unpack or unravel some different technologies. So today, real quick, I'm just going to give a high level about who is Choice. Maybe you aren't familiar with who we are and where we're kind of what our focus is on the market. But Choice was originally founded back in 1986 by our president and CEO, Jim Steinlocke. And it really is around two premises of doing the right thing and striving to treat others like you want to be treated. And so we felt like I said, he came out of a big consultancy and figuring out a way that we can come alongside customers and partner with them, introduce and educate them on technology, but also do it in the right way. And like I said, to consult with them and partner with them. Choice that over the last 5 years has had the pleasure of partnering with organizations, 750 across about 46 different states. And so you can see by our map here, obviously we have resources all across the geo, primarily in the Midwest and the Southeast. However, once again, due to our expertise around platforms like Nutanix, platforms like Citrix, platforms like Microsoft and Azure, it takes us into opportunities in healthcare, financial, energy, all across the United States of America. Why are we in business? And today's conversation is really relevant. And we look at this here as like the user experience in the hybrid workplace and emerging tech. I mean, once again, this is a dichotomy of what users are wanting and what businesses. And I think that people registered for this event this is a healthcare event that we have organizations all across that are attending because AI, they know it's going to have an impact. The users want it, but the businesses wants to deliver some of that value. But how do we do that in a secure manner? But we work with all kinds of emerging tech, really working with companies and how do they leverage technology to attract and retain key talent, and how do they do to keep them engaged, but most importantly in a secure manner. Then on the flip side, obviously from the technology aspect, is that we want to make sure those users are engaged and obviously productive, but most importantly, we want to make sure that they're doing that or leveraging that technology in a secure manner. And so I think today's topic in technology is very what we do is try to help companies. They know it's out there. They want to try to figure out how do they unpack this. And like I said, and events like this, and then follow-up events like this is how we kind of take them a crawl, walk, run on how to start looking at how can your organization leverage that new technology. How do we engage with organizations? We typically come alongside them, and everybody's at a different part in their cloud transformation. And cloud is such an overused term, but really it's a matter of the use of technology and where their adoption is. Some people they started with Office 365, they then went for a unified communication platform in the cloud. Some people have moved the whole platform. Some people they're always evaluating, and so we always try to come alongside and see where is the complexity, where's the emerging tech, how can we partner with them, how can we bring ideas to them to how to use technology in a more efficient manner. And it's something that we always know that bigger, better, faster doesn't fix anything. And so we always want to take a different look and a different technology that can maybe help them do a quantum leap in the tech and get some of that adoption and some of that advancement, which ultimately helps the users and how they're serving their customers. And so we always come alongside them and how to simplify the stack and also too how to evaluate that. And it's not just a matter that we're pushing a technology, just like when VDI came out, customers were wanting this, but we'd really step back and say, why do you want this? What is the outcome you're looking for to make sure that it's the right technology for what the outcome you're looking for? And then what is the right solution to deliver that? What we do is that, we work with a lot of organizations. We reference already emerging technology, but we help them on the acquisition of technology, hardware, software, infrastructure, even cloud technologies. And, what are the market leaders, helping you evaluate those options. Then we also, too, we have a full professional services team that helps you basically assess, architect, design, blueprint, install. On the other side of that, and advisory services that help you maybe before you even start down that path of why or what. Let's first evaluate what are the business requirements and what are the objectives of the business. Now let's start bringing in the technology rather than we're already looking at technology and we haven't established the outcomes. But the other thing that one of our faster parts of our business that is growing is managed services, and what this means to us, and that's another overused term I reference like cloud. Managed service to us is coming alongside you guys and identifying a gap, whether that's a resource gap, a knowledge gap, or whether that's just an operational gap that you do not want to backfill on your organization, where we can take our team, our tools, and our technologies, and we can wrap operating cost around that and deliver that and help you support that. Some people, it's a short-term deal that they need help to once again bridge maybe transitional resources. Some people they look, we don't we are We are literally doing more with less, and we want that operational components to go to a person organization that's 24 by 7, 365, that has people eyes on keyboards and eyes on monitors, all so they can watch our backups, watch our patches, watch our security. And then we want our team members to be focusing on taking technology forward that's helping us advance our business, not just the care and feeding and operational part. And that's what we do with managed services, is we really come alongside. It's not a just a blanket statement. It's really identifying where that gap is and where can we take some of the resources that we have and help partner with you on that. Like I said, what we do and how we partner with people and what we're being told how we can help is that people always looking. They're looking for an organization that has a tremendous amount of depth of expertise, also to a consistency of resources. We've been blessed with amazing talent, like I said, world regards in several of those platforms that have been with us for 10, 15, 20 plus years, which is very unusual for a IT organization. And we do it as by basically treating people, even our own team members, treating them how we want to be treated. We allow them to work with emerging technology. We don't force them to push certain solutions. We allow them to do the right thing in serving clients, and amazing how that helps the longevity of our team. But also too, with a proven track record and working with technologies, our goal is to keep you off the bleeding edge and to help you understand where the bleeding edge and the leading edge. And those are things also too with that's where that proven track record is, that we know where the technology is moving, and we'll help you look at that and evaluate that, make sure you're not deploying it until it's a proven technology. But also too, we have just an amazing team that really do care. We've had organizations that we've partnered with for 25 plus years, and that speaks volumes on just the relationship and helping them continue to serve their constituents and their customers, and help them continue to evolve with technology and being genuine in that. And it's really a partnership. Here's some of our key strategic technologies we get a chance to work with. And so today we're going to be talking about two of those, which is Nutanix and NVIDIA. But it's really around that, the end user compute hybrid workforce, and really how the end users are engaging with technology. And that's where a lot of times we start with either some of those advisory services and help the organizations evaluate some of these technologies and how they're currently using them, and also to evaluating what they could be doing differently. And so, like I said, today's topic is really, really interesting. Obviously, we all know that it's going to have a monumental impact, not only on in what we're doing in the workforce, but also too in careers and technology in general. And so, and I think that was really attributed to when we saw the registrations. We have executives and directors from all different types, even though this is a healthcare event, from all different organizations, because they know this is going to have an impact. And once again, what we want to try to do is help you start unpacking that, do a crawl, walk, run. Where's the first place where we can help you safely and securely start establishing unpacking that? And that's why we brought on both not only Scott Osborne, one of our architects, senior architects out of Omaha, but also to Jason Langoni from Nutanix. So Jason and Oz, thank you guys for joining us today, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thank you.
Let me stop my share there. All right, guys.
All right, I'm gonna share. Hopefully this works here in a second. You'll see my screen okay? Take that as a yes.
Yep, good to go.
Good. I think we're still good morning, right? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Langoni. I run our AI business here at Nutanix. It was actually a super, super early employee way back 2011, running our US federal business once upon a time. Did an 8-year run at Nutanix, left for 4 years, did a generative AI SaaS company, learned a lot, and we'll talk about some of those learnings today. But again, I'm thrilled to be back at Nutanix, as we have seen such a great demand for supporting generative AI initiatives with our customers along with Choice. So I'm just going to start here. I mean, I always say, a company has made it when my mom knows who they are. And, earlier this year, NVIDIA became one of the most valuable companies on the planet, which probably doesn't surprise anybody here. They became valuable, one, because they're shipping just an enormous amount of GPUs, and GPUs are, the horsepower for most of these generative AI, if not all of these generative AI initiatives across healthcare and banking and other organizations, but also because of the transformative value businesses are seeing when they start to adopt generative AI. And we'll talk about some of those use cases today. So to me, it's important to note that it's not just because NVIDIA is, making the best GPUs available, shipping the best GPUs available, but they're also helping companies truly transform through the use of generative AI. And so maybe just we'll start here just so we're all on the same page. Predictive AI has been around for a very long time. Depending on who you ask, they'll say, many, many decades. But, the gist of predictive AI is taking a large data set, understanding or recognizing a pattern, and being able to find anomalies or outliers within the pattern. Fraud detection is a very, very good example of predictive AI. Generative AI, clearly, which is in every podcast, it's all over my LinkedIn feed. It's on the radio in the morning. It's in my news. Is all about using AI to generate some type of content, whether it's video, whether it's a report, whether it's a music file. But it's using AI to now actually produce and generate content, ideally of value. Click the right spot. So Gartner's got a ton of great reports. I mean, most of the analysts do, but I've really found that Gartner's done a really good job, as we're kind of in these early days of generative AI. This was a report they published, I want to say 4 to 6 months ago, where through their research, they state that generative AI is now the most, commonly deployed AI solution in the enterprise. Again, that's compared with predictive AI. And again, it's probably not surprising to anybody here. What might be surprising is they also stated through their research that essentially quantifying the business value is the number one barrier to adoption. So it's not figuring out, hey, do I need an L40S or an L4 or an H100 GPU? It's not figuring out what model. It's not figuring out what vector database. It's having a specific business challenge that you can quantify the value of when you solve. So, I know when we're in the field with choice, and Brian summed it up great kind of in the opening, that it's really about positive business outcomes, understanding what are we trying to accomplish together, how do we start to quantify the value of overcoming that challenge or opening up a new capability, because ultimately that's what it's all about. And we certainly follow that same guidance and pathway here at Nutanix. I'm going to encourage everybody here to do so as well. LinkedIn's a treasure trove of anecdotes. I mean, it's also fairly noisy, so you're gonna have to sift through that a little bit. This was a post from the CEO of Moderna 8 months ago, I want to say 6 to 8 months ago, somewhere in that time range, where he was talking about the ways they have started to use generative AI. And I won't go through all of them here, but you can really start to see some of the value. Contract GPT, this notion of being able to upload a potential contract that your procurement team's going to sign or legal's going to sign, and having the generative AI process that contract versus all of the historical contracts you've ever signed to understand, hey, is this going to align with something that we're going to be able to green light? Even make suggestions when it finds maybe clauses that aren't acceptable, make suggestions of the red line edits themselves. I mean, and even so, something as I think kind of standard as that, all the way to prepping for earnings calls, which I thought was pretty creative. But we are seeing, again, whether it's healthcare agencies, still do a lot with the federal government. As long as there's a specific challenge, you can typically understand and start to architect a way to solve that challenge through generative AI. So let's talk about the most common use cases that we are seeing in the field. And some of these use cases, at least the first two, candidly, we see every day. I'm probably in, I'll say, an average of 6 customer calls a day around the world, and we see some of these just repeatedly. And the first use case is this notion of a private GPT, essentially something like Chat GPT, where everything is on-prem. The model's on-prem, the engine serving up the model, the infrastructure running everything, including the GPUs and the prompts and the logs and the output. Everything is contained on-prem, where you have people that want to be able to ask a question, to a multi-purpose large language model and start to get answers back. And maybe a good example of how I use this pretty often is I'll use it to give me a draft agenda for meetings, because when we're setting meetings internally, I'm kind of a stickler. Like, what's the agenda for the meeting? Like, you just don't drop an invite on my calendar. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? And so I use an internal private GPT here at Nutanix to help me put together a good agenda, so I look a little more professional. The next kind of evolution in that kind of initial use case is now being able to ask the artificial intelligence a question, and instead of getting kind of a polished but generic answer back from the large language model, now I want that artificial intelligence to be aware of maybe a repository of documents and PDF files, maybe data that I have living in a database. So when I ask a question, now I'm getting an answer back with context, with domain knowledge. So it's not just a generic answer. Now it's custom and specific to my line of business, to my company, maybe even my geography or the country that I'm working in. Commonly known as, RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Again, you'll see a lot of content on this use case, no matter where you're scrolling for news. But these two use cases right here, yeah, I'm fairly confident in saying everyone will do them or is doing them in the next 12 months. We've helped a lot already in this calendar year. We've got a lot of projects on the slate around the world, and it's just a very common, and I'll say kind of low risk, and we'll talk about risk in a second, but a low risk way to start unlocking transformative value, through generative AI, using the lovely GPUs from NVIDIA. So those are the first two. If you had to remember two use cases, those would be it. The other use cases that we see, this third one, which is the notion of a private copilot, essentially for developers. So, imagine an organization has some team, small, medium, large, of developers that crank out code to deliver a capability to internal employees, to their customers, to partner organizations, to government entity. But they're part of their business is shipping code. So there are SaaS offerings that help a developer type in a prompt, hey, give me a Java function that can go scrape ESPN.com and give me the Knicks schedule for the year and calculate win probability. So you do have that capability in SaaS, but there's a lot of organizations, especially in healthcare, regulated industries, where they see that capability up in the public cloud or via SaaS offering, but legal compliance security won't let them use it. So, we've been helping those customers deploy a private copilot on-prem so their developers can tap into, again, that transformative productivity that allows them to, one, refactor legacy code that maybe they didn't write, was in COBOL, maybe they never learned COBOL. Hey, can you translate that into modern day English to understand what this function's doing? Great. Now I get what it's doing. Now can you refactor that into Java or Python or some other language for me? So we see that again, the organization has to have some team of developers for that to make sense. And then again, going back to a point Brian opened up with, which is delivering positive business outcomes around a specific challenge. We certainly come across organizations who have a specific challenge. There's not an easy, off-the-shelf generative AI solution that can be deployed to meet that challenge. So now they've decided that, hey, this is highly valuable. We've quantified, at least partially what this value could look like to the organization, but we're going to have to build a generative AI capability. And that's typically done through, NVIDIA AI enterprise stack or Data Robot, Domino, any number of platforms. And again, I have it as the fourth use case. It certainly comes up often with more mature organizations in their generative AI journey. But as long as there's a specific business challenge identified and we can start to quantify the value, the use case also makes sense. I can't see the Q&A box, so if there are questions, if someone just wants to shout, and Oz, if you've got any gems along the way, please don't be shy.
Sure, man. I didn't want to take your camera at all, so I was debating whether to come on or off.
All good. You got the better background.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like the blur, Tells a story.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. So, we've talked a little bit about the primary use cases. And again, those top two we see every single day. Doesn't really matter the vertical, the company size, the country that they're doing business in. We see those two use cases very often. The next is deciding where you're ultimately going to run your generative AI applications, your Gen AI infrastructure. Clearly, public cloud is an option. We see a lot of folks prototype there. And I will just kind of distill it down to, from a Nutanix perspective and an NVIDIA perspective, we got an offering that supports public and private cloud. So I can't say it matters a ton either way there. What I will say, though, and probably the biggest lesson I learned when I was at the generative AI startup, is I was amazed how many times legal jumped into our project late, kind of in the planning stages before kickoff, and said, "Oh, you're not running that up in AWS or Azure or GCP. Like, we need this stuff on-prem. The liability exposure is too great. We need absolute control." And then you see headlines like this as well, whether it's, the Times suing OpenAI over use of their data to train a model, or UMG, Getty, you name it. But there's a lot of concern on, hey, the data that we feed the generative AI application and that we provide to the model, or the questions we ask, will that be used to improve that model that maybe our competitors are also using? Is it possible for someone to know how to ask the right question to uncover our bit of data found within that model? So there's definitely a lot of concerns there, and rightfully so. I thought this was a really nice kind of quote and guidance from MIT, Sloan School of Management, where they're saying, hey, you should really think of, models and the data, the prompts, the logs, the applications. All of this is extremely valuable IP. We're in the early days of this emerging generative AI era. It very much, there's a bunch of good articles out there, and like the haves and the have-nots of those that adopt this technology. But there is a lot of value, even in just understanding, let's say you deploy a private GPT internally, in understanding what your employees are asking. Maybe that unlocks an opportunity to go build a capability that makes them more efficient doing a particular task. So again, MIT is recommending, really view this as valuable IP. You want absolute control and visibility over all of this. And for most organizations, whether they're in a regulated industry or not, that's going to mean a private cloud deployment. We could spend an hour on this topic. I'm a pretty simple person. I like to distill AI, and I would encourage you to kind of distill your thinking of AI down to this, that AI is just software that runs in containers. Yeah, there's a lot of cool technology under the covers, but when you think about it operationally, from an IT perspective, and if you think of it that, okay, ultimately AI is just a software application that's running in a container, or a cluster of containers. And yes, it's true that that software needs access to GPUs from NVIDIA. You need some kind of enterprise Kubernetes management so you can manage these containers at scale. You need storage for structured and unstructured data. You need models. You need to serve up the models. But I think it allows you to start to grapple operationally with what it will mean to deploy generative AI in your organization. A couple of things that maybe a lot of people don't talk about. Ultimately, AI, or this software running in containers, it's living on infrastructure somewhere. So you still need to maintain hardware. And I know that's not glamorous, but I can tell you, with the customers that were early adopters with Nutanix over the last year, we've seen the rate at which they're expanding their generative AI environments. And again, understanding how to manage at scale, both the container level, the Kubernetes level, as well as the hardware level, is important. And then the last thing that I really think, is worth spending some time thinking through internally within your organization is, how heavy of a lift is it to run generative AI on a particular platform or on a particular infrastructure? And that's one of the areas and one of the talk tracks, Nutanix and Choice has out in the field with our customers is, look, especially if you've been a Nutanix customer for the past year, or 5 years, or 10 years, and you've been happy running and operating virtual machines on a Nutanix environment, well, hey, guess what? We're going to deliver that same delightful experience for containers, even if those containers are running AI software, and talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I do think it's really important that, you want to start to adopt generative AI, because it will transform not just the value you see out of certain areas within, line of business within your organization. It'll transform how you operate in a very positive way. But it's also important to think of how are we going to run this infrastructure? Is it going to become a burden? Do we have to send all of our IT department out to get, new skills and new certifications, or can we run on a platform that has made this as easy as possible so we can focus just on the value and, maybe the people process part of our organization? So let's talk a little bit about kind of our big announcement. And we just came out of our internal kickoff last week in Vegas, which my voice is still a little scratchy. But we, a year ago, announced something called Nutanix GPT-in-a-Box, which delivered, and kind of going back to that recipe list, storage and enterprise Kubernetes and the ability to, patch and maintain servers at scale. But what we've now announced in Barcelona at our .next conference, maybe 4 months ago now, is the evolution of that we're now calling Nutanix Enterprise AI. And it's delivering this new layer of infrastructure that's required for deploying or building generative AI applications. So this will be probably as technical as we get today. But again, for those not familiar, Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure, is kind of has been our bread and butter for over a decade. It's an infrastructure designed for running and maintaining virtual machines. It comes with a hypervisor as well. We've got enterprise grade storage, the ability to manage databases, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'll say in the AI space is your infrastructure conversation often starts at the Kubernetes level. So from our perspective, we offer freedom of choice. Hey, if you've standardized on OpenShift, more power to you. We also offer up our own Kubernetes platform called NKP, Nutanix Kubernetes platform, but we support all the major platforms on the market. And that's really where AI infrastructure starts. So you've got this Kubernetes layer, again, freedom of choice. Welcome to use ours. You're welcome to use somebody else's. And if we go up 2 levels, you're either deploying off-the-shelf generative AI applications, whether it's something like Codium or Prion, you name it, or you're building generative AI capabilities, again, with the NVIDIA AI for Enterprise stack or in Data Robot or Domino or some other platform. But there's this layer in between the two that's now required within the enterprise to support this new generative AI application layer. And we'll spend a couple of minutes here talking about that. The first is this notion of an enterprise model repository. And why this is important is security, compliance, legal are all going to chime in on what model or what models are allowed to be used within your enterprise organization. So with an enterprise model repository, IT or the AI team can take that authorization and say, okay, Llama 3, as an example, has been authorized for use within our organization. 2 clicks, we're going to import the Llama 3 model, and through enterprise RBAC or role-based access control, we can now at a granular level provide access to those we want to have access to it, applications that need access to it, and we also have the ability to revoke that access. So an enterprise model repository is giving centralized command and control over the models that are allowed to be used within your organization. You need a mechanism to serve that model up. Models are just files. There's nothing, there's valuable information in them, but they're just flat files. So you need a mechanism to serve that model up. And that's what's known as an inference endpoint or an inference endpoint microservice. So that's now serving up that model to the various lines of businesses, to the various generative AI applications that you've deployed off the shelf, and maybe even to NVAIE or, again, Data Robot for building customized generative AI capabilities. And again, not glamorous, but really, really important. At some point, guarantee it, the phone's going to ring and they're going to say, hey, the Gen AI app is slow or it's down or it's giving inconsistent answers. How quickly can IT start to troubleshoot what's going on? And if you think about the stack, there are more pieces now. Yes, there's still storage. Yes, there's still virtual networking and CPU utilization. What's going on at the Kubernetes layer from a container or a cluster perspective? Is my GPU running at 99% utilization? What's the latency looking like on my inference endpoint microservice? You need to have visibility into all of that to do proper root cause analysis, to be efficient in your troubleshooting. And this is what we announced again 4 months ago in Barcelona. We spent most of last week at our internal kickoff, educating and training and talking about this new product offering from Nutanix. There's really nothing like it on the market, at least today. I'm sure we'll see competitors coming up and coming out in the future, but it's a UI-driven experience, much like if you've used Nutanix before, we try and distill it into a very delightful user experience. It's the same thing here. I don't think we have time today, but happy to walk folks through, a demo alongside Choice, if and when it makes sense. But to me, this allows, again, IT or an AI ML team or a data science team to stay focused on solving that specific business challenge or unlocking that new, maybe revenue generating capability and not have to be bogged down with the supporting infrastructure. And it also, kind of the flip side of that, it allows IT to say yes to the various lines of business who want to deploy generative AI to start seeing transformative value. So again, happy to jump in a demo after this. Spend 10 seconds here, maybe. We use generative AI a couple different ways internally, from helping our sales force answer questions that they might have to also our own support organization, which has been world-class since I was here. And, as I come back, answer questions and help customers get down a path of resolution much quicker. We essentially have used all of our internal KBs, our public facing articles, the Nutanix Bible, internal support tickets to really make it a very powerful application for our support engineers that, when a customer logs a support ticket, they're now able to tap into all of this very quickly and get an answer back that will help them start walking down a path of resolution with our customer. And then maybe before I wrap, I just leave you with a little food for thought, which is Ernst & Young had this really cool report. If you want to geek out on economics, it's worth a read. But they essentially state that, generative AI is creating exponential value within the enterprise. And, why that's important is, every organization every year has to stack rank priorities. Hey, where are we going to allocate budget? Where are we going to allocate resources? Where are we going to spend time? And, they use various APIs to try and stack rank that, maybe net present value. But when you think of it, that generative AI is creating exponential value, and the overwhelming majority of most enterprise initiatives create linear value. If you take two companies, company A and company B, and company A starts their generative AI journey today, and company B delays it 6 months. In 6 months, company B is not a mere 6 months behind their competitor. They might be 12, 24, 36, 48, 70. They are some number significantly greater behind company A because company A has started to extract value from generative AI. They've started to evolve their internal processes to work in this emerging generative AI era. They've started to evolve how IT manages operations. They've started to build muscle memory around troubleshooting generative AI capabilities. They're more likely to start moving horizontal within their organization to uncover new valuable use cases to start working on. So to me, it's a really compelling thought on why it's important to find a specific business challenge today or soon that you can start embarking on this journey together with your trusted partners. And maybe with that, Oz, I'm going to toss the baton to you, sir.
Yep, and I'll pull up mine. There was one question I was holding for us switching over for you. I thought it was a good one. while I'm going to share my screen, but that one in the Q&A, if you're looking at it, about the domain knowledge required, you see that?
That is a good question. What level of domain knowledge is required for teams to implement and manage generative AI models using Nutanix GPT-in-a-Box? So if we were to walk through a demo, you would essentially see 2 clicks to pick a model and deploy the model or download the model. And then you would see 4 clicks to serve up that model with an inference endpoint. So there's not a steep learning curve. We offer boot camps and operational readiness workshops. So I don't think there's a steep learning curve. I do think it's important, though, just to be genuinely interested and curious in the technology. There's a lot of free resources out there where you can start consuming. There's plenty of good podcasts. But from my perspective, we have really lowered the technical bar to make it easy for IT teams to start on this journey as well. Really good question.
Yeah, thanks, man. Can you guys see my screen? We good?
All good.
Sweet. Thanks, Jason. So I'm going to take a step back, actually. So a lot of cool stuff just with AI in general these days, and really, it's blown up over the course of a couple of years now, to where, like Jason mentioned, his mom knows about some of these things, kind of like my mom knew about what CrowdStrike was after that hit. It's everywhere, right? So, the exponential growth, the falling behind, if a company isn't using it, I mean, you see it just anywhere and everywhere with AI. Zoom has it, Copilot. I mean, Slack translation, anything and everything you can think of. If they aren't doing some sort of generative AI or RAG or helping their product from a feature standpoint with that, they're falling behind, right? So I know this webinar was, originally healthcare focused. We have quite a few verticals, customers, ones that I've worked with before I see on the list, ones that I'm going to be working with, and really just GPU in general, right? Why GPU for AI, healthcare, anything? So if you don't know my background, I'm a community advisor on the NVIDIA side of things. I co-lead the EUC practice with my boy Shane Kleiner down in the Southeast, and it comes up a lot in EUC from a visual aspect side of things, right? For GPUs, AI now is more to the compute side of the house for GPUs, but they're everywhere. NVIDIA is everywhere, and why is that really the case, right? So I wanted to take a step back because, like Jason said, it's really about the business. The business need for it is the first thing you got to figure out. Once you have a business need, which pretty much everybody is going to have one, once you figured out what that specific need is for your enterprise, then it's figuring out the right solution, right? And that's where it gets into NVIDIA is usually always going to be in that conversation. NVIDIA has, I think I saw 98% of the GPU market at this point. So if you talk about monopolies on a market and why NVIDIA is that most valuable company from that standpoint that you saw, that's why, right? So there we go. So really it's that all-encompassing, like, GPUs are everywhere, but it's not just from what we're seeing today with what Nutanix is doing with GPT-in-a-Box, AI. Taking a step backwards, where did NVIDIA come from in the early 90s, right? So this has been mainstream for a long time. So we're in IT. I'm not a gamer, but all you fellow gamers on the call, you've been familiar with NVIDIA and what they've been doing for a long time, right? With their RTX cards, their Quadro cards. It started with gaming, and then it went to metaverse. What's going on there with virtual reality, and then crypto came along, right? That went to the compute side of the house, right? These first two are more the graphic side. Compute side came around with crypto. That was hot for quite some time. Still ongoing with Bitcoin and all that. And then AI came down, right? So the AI really broke through with, obviously, ChatGPT. I had kind of timeline on that I want to talk to, but why is it king for all these? Well, it's parallel processing, right? In one sentence, in a nutshell, what I could explain is like a GPU breaks smaller operations down into tasks that it can do in parallel. The CPU is serial processing. It has to do things sequentially. It's slow. It cannot handle what a GPU can do at scale. I think, yeah, it's just massively different from a GPU standpoint from what a CPU can do. So for all of these, that's why it can do what it can do. And really, it's an increase, just like everything in the technology, exponentially over the years. I think it's 7,000 times since 2003. From the GPU performance aspect for what NVIDIA has been putting out, and then that price performance is like 5,600 times greater. I think I saw, but it's because of all this put together, and then the tensor cores, right? So their GPUs have purpose-built tensor cores for the purpose of what they're doing, right? So unlike a CPU, which might have 48 cores, or some have higher dual core, like these have hundreds, if not thousands, of these specialized cores for that parallel processing, right? Again, it's visualization and compute. So the flexibility of doing both, and depending on the card, some cards can't, some cards can, but the flexibility of both the visualization side of the house and the compute side of the house, which in healthcare has been big on both sides for us. And then really that scale up, right? Scale up on that from a supercomputing HPC. This can go to those just incredible heights of expanding, right? I think I saw that GPT-4 is like 1 trillion parameters or something insane for that model, or for what it's doing. So just to be able to do that and scale up to that, GPUs are the only way to get there, right? And so in healthcare specifically, for us, it's the EUC side where you got a virtual desktop or the app, or even Epic backed, for example, by as an EMR, EHR can take advantage of hardware acceleration more on the from just accelerating from that standpoint. The assistance, the drug research and discovery, customer record tracking, predictive diagnosis, on and on. So I put on the left side here just kind of what, from, I think this was back in 2019, was this? So it was interesting to me. It might have been even earlier. Can't imagine what this would be now, but there's no doubt that AI in healthcare is going to be assisting, our best doctors, nurses. I can tell you right now, my wife's a nurse. So she's an ER nurse. Anybody that knows me knows this story. She's an ER nurse for 10 years. Now works with the veterans over at the VA hospital. They've been starting to use, diagnosis from an AI standpoint. It's been something she's been doing here for a little while, right? So it's everywhere in that industry. My wife's been using it. She, of course, didn't care what was behind that or what helps her, with that. But, it's been helping her save lives now for, over 10 years. Just recently did it really just break in. And what I mean by that is, as you can see here, the evolution, right? The one I got a pointer to here is really in 2022, ChatGPT came along. That's where all of everybody, this became mainstream. There was a long runway up to this that not a lot of people know. Like AlexNet was a neural net back in 2012. That's when we, as Choice Solutions, started really seeing the light with the. I started working with NVIDIA back in the Kepler card days for the visual. That was before they had software. It was just you bought a GPU and that was it. There was no software licensing. That was their Kepler cards back in 2012. That's when we were doing a lot of work there and started our work on the EUC side. But, it basically has been coming about for quite some time. NVIDIA has, if you've heard of CUDA, that's their proprietary, just them pioneering this whole GPU and general application aspects of being able to harness the power of GPU is basically what CUDA did in the 2006, 2007 era. It's just they've been doing this for a long time. That really ignited the era of modern AI today, which is what Jason just got done talking about, generative AI and where we are here. It's pretty incredible. And GPT-4, like I said, has like 1 trillion plus parameters. This is just going to keep accelerating. And I did want to ask if anybody happens to know a quick trivia question, because Jason, a lot of people just skip over what does GPT mean? It's a trivia question that not a lot of people might know off the top of your head. You're like hitting Perplexity up or Chat GPT right now. But in general, there you go. It's a generative pre-trained transformer. So trivia question. Next time at trivia night, you got the answer. Really, this one here. So on the left-hand side is you got the story behind, what Jason just talked through. They have open source. You can do open source community type stuff, or you can use NVIDIA's AI enterprise software. As he mentioned, on top of this stack, the NVIDIA AI enterprise software stack from NVIDIA is fully supported with their AI engineers. It's the security patching, it's the life cycle, it's the container, the Nemo side of things. It's the full software stack from NVIDIA. And then on the right-hand side here really is the time of adoption. Everybody knows about the SaaS services, right? The Google Bard or the Geminis now, the Chat GPT, the Copilots. It's basically a consumption model. You can pay the premium software subscriptions on that, but it's a consumption model. It's the fastest to market. I really like this because it's quick. But obviously, there's data privacy concerns. Everybody knows about this stuff. You can upload some, a few things to it to help it learn, but there's not really any customizations you can do from that standpoint. It's a consumption-based model, right? So the GPT-in-a-Box and what Nutanix is doing, in my mind, kind of falls into the middle, where it's more moderate customization. This is courtesy of NVIDIA for these type of models, where you can easily bring in an LLM. You can customize it to your needs. Then, for the training, there's two sides of this. Take a step back. There's training and there's inference. You probably heard Jason mention it. Training is where you're taking the time to train the model to do what you want it to do, right? So you have to train these models. You have to feed information to them, customize them, get them ready to actually do the inferencing, and actually bringing the value to the business from that side of things. So we fall more into the moderate customization. And then, one thing I would probably add to this as well, it's not on that slide from NVIDIA there, is really the data privacy concerns, right? So on the bottom arrow, as you go to, or the top arrow, as you go to the SaaS model, you're going to have more of that data leakage, right? You get more risk. You can't be doing that in these public models and uploading your own customer information or your enterprise information to those, especially healthcare. God forbid, you can't be doing patient diagnosis and uploading that to a public model. So you need this private model, this private solution for being able to deliver that, right? So data security, privacy is kind of key there that I put there, because in my mind, that's where you really get into what Nutanix is helping us with here, right? For that private in there. So, what does this look like? Just a little bit back, you got vGPU and you got direct pass-through. The GPT models, the GPT-in-a-Box, these are direct pass-through, right? You go directly to the GPU, you're doing your thing. A lot of the other aspects that I work with on the UC side is vGPU, where we're slicing it up. Higher density, taking advantage of that GPU from multiple virtual machines. So, from an NVIDIA aspects, both are obviously in play depending on the use case. You got the virtual workstation RTX side of things. This is all the software licensing I was talking about. Now we got the NVIDIA AI Enterprise. It's all software license. The only difference, the AI Enterprise is per GPU. Virtual workstation, any of those models for EUC are either per user or per VM from a licensing aspect, but just know that this kind of gives a synopsis of what that looks like with the vGPU piece between that and the hypervisor and what that gives you. And basically, CUDA-X is the base libraries on top of CUDA, and then the full NVIDIA enterprise support with their AI experts and whatnot. So NVIDIA is obviously top of the game here, so you're welcome to use obviously the NVIDIA AI Enterprise on a per GPU basis with the Nutanix solution, right? So And then the other thing, if you haven't heard of it, I'm not going to dive into this, but the NeMo framework comes with the NVIDIA AI Enterprise. It's really the start to finish, soup to nuts, everything you would need to deploy, to train, deploy, do anything from a generative AI or an AI standpoint within the enterprise. This is their newly announced GA at GTC for what they're doing in NVIDIA AI Enterprise. And then taking a further step back, I was like, what GPU do you need? NVIDIA has all kinds of GPUs. You've probably seen that. We got in 2 days' time, we got NVIDIA coming out with their next earnings report, and everybody's kind of looking forward to that, and because the NASDAQ comes and goes with where NVIDIA goes, but their Blackwells are delayed right now, and so every answers there because NVIDIA owning that market, they have an assortment of GPUs, and what do you need is critical there, right? So, you have some on the far right-hand side of this, which pretty much plays for the EUC side that we've been talking about a long time. You got some that are graphics focused, some that are compute focused, some that are both. Which a common one there is that L40S right in the middle. It's kind of known as the universal GPU. The Blackwell isn't on this chart, but those are the ones that everybody's looking forward to for the most highest precision, big time AI. You're talking about exaflops of AI performance, right? So 30 terabytes of fast memory on those. All of these, the terminology over here, AI is a whole new world, basically, right? With IT, with the terminology and things you got to learn with the floating point calculations. You got single precision, which is the 32. You got double. You got half. All of these matter in the AI world to folks like Jason. He's an AI expert. He's come from that world. I am not. I'm new. I've been in the NVIDIA side of things for a long time, but AI and everything that you got to worry about from that aspect, it's different technical functionality and measurements here, the things that you got to think about more, right? So, whereas on the visual, I might be worried about, do I support AV1 or not from an encoder? How many encoders and decoders do I have on that GPU? For AI, that's not really as big of a thing that I'm worried about. It's more about how much bandwidth is NVLink in play, is how many the floating point memory, and all of this stuff comes into play, right? So, for us, it's really with the GPT-in-a-Box. I know the big popular one right now is the L40S, which really came about with, honestly, the delays in the A100s and the H100s, which is the same thing. Customers having a hard time getting their hands on that stuff, to a point where those cards, I think the CEO of Cisco at one point was saying they were bringing them in. They brought them in with armored cars for those GPUs. They were so hard to get a hold of. So the L40S is known as really the universal GPU, which can do just on both sides of the house, graphics, compute. It's a popular offering in the NVIDIA or in the Nutanix hardware offerings. I know GPT-in-a-Box is a big one. They might still have the A30s, A40s as options, but the L40S, the L4 is more of an EUC play. That was a very popular one for us on the graphics side of things that we're doing a lot with. The L40 was just kind of that predecessor to the L40S. But as you go further from there, it's more the compute heavy, obviously more expensive offerings from that standpoint. But really, just to give you a look here at what these, what these are, you got a lot of different metrics here. All of this matters, right? So all of this is very, very important when you're getting down to just brass tacks on which GPU to pick, which is the best offering for you from an NVIDIA standpoint. What's important there, right, for us. All of this is what goes into the Nutanix sizing for GPT-in-a-Box, for example, or for us doing EUC for visual and graphics, and what the AI at the endpoint might look like from an EUC standpoint, right? So both sides of the house. As I mentioned, the encode, the decode engines, the AV1 encode and decode support. These are the newest ones, like, for example, with Citrix that support AV1. So yeah, this is a credible GPU. And what does that actually look like? There you go. Kind of It's a very small form factor. This also comes into play. It's a one slot PCI card versus the bigger one, as you can see to the right. It's a full, full height, full length card, more wattage, all this stuff. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about there and the play there from an NVIDIA standpoint. It's something I've been passionate about for quite some time. It's just come to the forefront again in a different aspect now with AI. But there's still quite a few of the gamers out there using NVIDIA cards in their home PCs for gaming. So that's really talk through for my piece. I know we got about 5 minutes for any other additional questions, or Jason, if you got anything else, but yeah.
I was trying to think through what I would do if I was going to Home Depot this afternoon. I've got a list.
Absolutely. Well, the Jason and Oz, thank you guys both for, like I said, help us unpack this. And I guess for all of you joining in, obviously there's a lot here. And so our ask would be is if we scratched anything, is that reach out, let's schedule a call, maybe initial 20 to 30-minute call, kind of talking about maybe some areas of interest, and then we could schedule a more intentional time to help you start unpacking where either we're talking about the GPT in a box or whether we're talking about how to enable GPUs just in your compute structure and how to get the benefit and that form factor in your business for performance. But either way, is like I said, there's a lot here. Like any of these technologies emerging, once again, we always take that crawl, walk, run, and helping your team get their arms around it and get comfortable with it as you guys look to deploy that, and then help train you in knowledge transfer and all those components, so you're not dependent upon an organization like Nutanix or Choice to support the infrastructure. So we greatly appreciate and value the partnership. Please, Ellie's going to be sending out the survey. Please complete that one so you get your Home Depot gift card. If not, send it to Jason. He's got a list of items he needs. But also to give us feedback. We want to make sure if there's a follow-on segment that we could do that you feel like would be tremendous value for you, that you think others would as well, then let us know. We might be able to put together a follow-up webinar, a 2.0, because like I said, there's a lot here, and this is something that once again, it's not going to be overnight. We know this is an evolution, but we all know this is going to make a monumental impact in all of our industries. And so, like I said, it's an exciting time, but also too, we want to make sure that security, like I said, if our legal counsel or our security manager were here, they are very in tune with everything that we are doing as an organization, as I imagine yours will be as well. So with that, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your trust, and we look forward to getting the chance to engage with you and unpack these technologies. So thank you for your partnership. Have an awesome